Ice Shard Sorc is a powerful build, but unfortunately, the mana can get quite pricey. If you run out of mana, you run out of damage. Worse yet, when you're trying to optimize for Elementalist's aspect, you want to maintain over 100 mana, which means that you don't get to cap your crit unless you have a lot of mana regeneration. And when I initially swapped from Arclash, a build that effectively doesn't use mana at all, to Ice Shards, I promptly ran into mana issues. After checking the actual Discord, looking at a couple of comments on videos, talking to people on Twitch, I noticed that I wasn't the only one. A lot of people were running into issues on Sorc. Now, I can't solve all your problems for all the builds, but dozens of legendary aspects later, and a small fortune worth of skill shuffling, I figured out a way that works for Ice Shard. And I wish I could say it was simple. Just do these key 3 things and everything's good. But as it turns out, Diablo IV is a little more complicated than that. So I'm going to go over it and break things down in this video. Starting off with Avalanche. This is a key passive and one of Sorcerer's capstone skills. It gives your Frost abilities a 10% chance for the next cast of Ice Shards, Frozen Orb, or Blizzard to be free. And because this chance is doubled against vulnerable enemies, you'll want to use Destructive Ice Shards, ensuring that you have 100% vulnerable uptime on both elites and bosses. To further maximize on vulnerability, you also want Frigid Breeze, giving you a 20% chance to recover 15 mana when striking a vulnerable enemy. This is a lucky hit, so you're going to have to build for lucky hit. And if you're going to be building for lucky hit, you might as well also get a modifier on your gloves or offhand, 5% chance to restore primary resources, this will scale off of your maximum mana, and could proc independently from Frigid Breeze or Avalanche. One other thing that you might be tempted to try is going into Shimmering Frost Nova, but for me, this felt like a noob trap. Yes, it does give a nice burst of mana when used on a large pack of foes, but that's never where I was running out of mana to begin with. And to make matters worse, losing the vulnerable from Frost Nova actually reduced a lot of my procs due to the Ice Shard enchantment absolutely blasting packs, piercing through and ricocheting around. So we've established that the first part of fixing your mana is lucky hit. To do that, you need lucky hit chance. Ice Shards, by default, has a 16% proc rate, meaning your lucky hit chance is going to be multiplied by 0.16. This sounds bad, so it's never going to proc, right? Well, Ice Shards hits 5 times per cast, meaning 5 chances to proc per cast. So it's actually not going to be that bad. You certainly won't proc it on every cast, but if you theoretically had a 100% chance to lucky hit, you'd be proccing it roughly 8 out of every 10 times. So to maximize your lucky hit effects, you want to scale the base lucky hit effect using lucky hit chance or lucky hit chance while you use barrier, such as the Of Fortune legendary gear aspect. Now personally, I didn't end up using precision magic for 15%, but it's also not a bad thing to have. So let's just use an example where you have Avalanche 10% base, 2 points in precision magic for another 10%, and 17% from an Of Fortune aspect. This means that your lucky hit chance is 10 times 1.27. That's right, increases to lucky hit chance are multiplied, not added. So, a 27% increase on 10, or 10 times 1.27, is 12.7%, which is then doubled against vulnerable enemies for 25.4%. Because Ice Shards has a proc rate per shard of 0.16, it's 4.064% chance to trigger per Ice Shard, meaning that you're going to get 1 lucky hit, roughly, for every 25 Ice Shards that hits an enemy. On single target, this means it won't necessarily be proccing constantly, though remember you do also have a chance for Frigid Breeze and the chance to restore primary resource on lucky hit. Those are independent, they'll get scaled up by lucky hit chance and proc completely separately. All 3 could proc at once, overfilling your mana, or more likely they're just kind of randomly going to space themselves out, since it's a different proc chance for each and 1 in 25 isn't exactly that frequent. Also remember that you cast a phenomenal amount of Ice Shards, especially when AoE is involved. Your Ice Shards pierces through enemies, hitting multiple targets per cast, you fire 5 shards per cast, and they ricochet, and all of those things can proc lucky hit. But now that you have mana restoration, you need to make good use of a mana you have. So mana efficiency or resource generation on gear are quite important stats. From my experience, getting a good mana efficiency roll on your amulet, then a second roll on either your offhand or boots. As a note, you can technically use any combination of the 3, is mandatory for mana to feel good, as you want to lower the mana cost of ice shards as low as possible, ideally to around 20. Getting resource generation is nice and certainly makes it easier to maintain 100 plus mana for the Elementalist legendary aspect, but doesn't feel strictly mandatory in the same way. And speaking of legendary aspects, there's a few that greatly help with mana, the first of which is mandatory. That is Frozen Memories, which causes your Avalanche to apply to an additional cast. So instead of getting one cast of Ice Shards for free, now you get 2 casts of Ice Shards for free. Plus, this also means Avalanche's 40% damage bonus is up for that second cast, making it a great aspect for both damage and mana efficiency, which I would say feels mandatory anytime you're going to use Avalanche, which you should be on this build before you go full GG endgame gear and swap over to Shatter for more AoE damage. Beyond that, you have 2 more options craftable on rings. Prodigies, which restores 15 or 25 on a dropped version whenever you use a cooldown, or Incendiary Aspect, which gives burning damage a 5% chance on lucky hit to restore 10 mana. On AoE, I found that Incendiary recovered a lot more mana, but personally, I never found that I was having mana issues on AoE, probably because of all the Ice Shards multiplying like I mentioned before, and all the Ice Shards firing for free from my Ice Shard enchantment. So ultimately, I stuck with Prodigies. And last but not least, if all else fails, take the ultimate skill Deep Freeze, and pair that with Supreme Deep Freeze, then grab an Encased legendary aspect to restore 20% of life and mana per second when you Ice Block. This way, you'll exit Deep Freeze with full life and mana, plus a barrier, which is great for proccing lucky hit, and most of your cooldowns will be reset, therefore leaving them up to restore even more via Prodigies. Combine all of these things, and not only should you be able to sustain enough mana to do single target damage, but you'll sustain enough mana to actually stay over 100 and maximize your Elementalist's bonus. If you want to know more about the build, my exact gear, the choices I'm making, and my overall experience, then do be sure to get subscribed, as that video is going to be coming out in the very near future. Don't forget to leave a like while you're down there. That's my rather long explanation of how I solve mana on Sorc. I was hoping to keep it short, but a TLDR of just get Avalanche as the legendary aspect and some lucky hit chance ended up leaving a surprising amount out, and I figured it might do more harm than good. So today, I've learned 2 things. Maybe D4 isn't as shallow as it first appears, and second of all, it takes a lot of work to make mana feel amazing, but put in the time, and the build's absolutely worth it. There are a few very small other things, like using Ice Armor on cooldown, putting points into Fiery Surge, but these are very minor in comparison to everything that I covered before. So far, I've been having a lot of fun with Sorc, but I'm considering taking a little break from the build to maybe play some Necro and explore a few builds there. And so I'm kind of curious, what builds do you want to know about in D4? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Also, a big thanks to Northwar, not only for writing the Ice Shards endgame guide over on Maxroll, but taking the time to answer a couple of my questions regarding things like lucky hit chance. If you want to check the guide out for yourself, it'll be down in the description. The only piece of advice I'll give is do be sure to read everything. There's an incredible level of detail, and if you just look at the embeds, you'll probably miss something important, like why certain decisions are being made and what items require which choices. With that said, and before I go, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for their continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link down below. If you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out how I leveled a Arclash Hybrid Sorc. If you want to know about Diablo 4's endgame, I've got a guide on that. What's in the shop, I've got a guide on that. Or you just want a nice simple recommendation, don't worry, it's on screen right now. And so, hopefully this video solved all your mana problems, made your build feel a lot smoother, and helped you get back to killing lots of demons. With that said, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.